When it comes to luxury real estate photography, unlike daytime photos, my clients are always getting twilight photography. Why? Because it really showcases the mood and lifestyle of the property, unlike the daytime photos, especially when the home was built with lighting in mind for the interior and the outside landscaping. So I want to show you guys today a couple of images that I shot for a recent shoot I did for my client here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I want you guys to see how easy it is. Once we have everything set in place, all we need to just time the shoot, make sure that our balance of light is perfect for the interior and exterior, compose our shots, shoot it, edit it back on the computer, and deliver it to our client. Doesn't take that much time because we don't have to worry about color cast. We don't have to worry about too much about mixed lighting because we don't have any of that exterior ambient light coming into the scene because most of the light is dominated by the interior lights. So let's get to these images and show you how it's done. And guys, before we get started, just a reminder, the PMRE conference is just a couple months away. We are more than over 50% sold out on the general tickets, as well as the workshops that are along with the conference. Make sure you guys get those tickets because between now and then, those tickets are gonna go really, really fast and they're not gonna be any more available for you guys to purchase. So go to PMREconference.com to get those tickets for the event and also for the workshop. This is going to be another amazing event this year in 2023. Whether you're a photographer, videographer, or in any type of media, this is the place to be to learn, network, and grow with so many people in this industry. I hope to see you all there because it's going to be another amazing event. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get to this image breakdown. So here's our first image, and as you can see, this was shot during twilight, around the time between dusk and when it's transitioning into that blue twilight sky. Now, a couple little things we have to tweak here, which is not that much. Really, the main things we have to worry about is, number one, just making sure that our outside is a little bit more exposed so it's not so fallen into darkness. And then on the interior, we want to just make sure we tame some of these highlights so it's not so strong. And that's pretty much it. Everything else looks really good. We don't really have to do too much. Like I said, when it comes to twilights, as long as you shoot it at the right time of day, you'll be good to go. And you don't have to worry about color cast, or anything like that because the outside light has already fallen darker than the interior. So the interior of the property is what's the most dominant light source in the scene. So really, you don't need to worry about combating any kind of color cast unless the only time you would probably worry about that is if you were dealing with a property that had mixed lighting bulbs within the scene, and then you'd have to tackle that. But in this particular situation, this home had all consistent lighting and color, so it makes our job very, very simple to capture and edit back at the computer. So let's take a look at the final result of this image and see how we built this up. So here's our final image, and as you can see, it was just a couple little things we needed to do to polish this image up and deliver it for our client. The main thing we took care of was, number one, look at our outside view there. It's nicely exposed, and we have detail in the trees and the landscaping areas around that backyard, as well as the interior. We did tame some of the highlights so it's not so bright, and we made sure we kept the contrast in the blacks in the scene so it's not so brought up with the shadows. We still want to retain the nice contrast because when you open up those shadows too much, you lose that contrast and it really just turns it into a flat image. You want to retain that contrast because that contrast really helps to give the sharpness and texture and feel of this image. And that's it. As you can see, it didn't take me long at all to edit this image. It was just a couple little tweaks we did, which is balancing the color so it's a little bit more cooler, cleaning up some of the debris that was on the outside, and then just making sure we had nice contrast for the blacks in the scene, and we had a nice balanced exposure for that interior and exterior. It really didn't take that long, and it was very easily done because, like I said, during twilight, it doesn't take that long to shoot that photo, especially when you time everything right. It's easy. Just set up your camera, find your composition, shoot, and then take it back to the computer to edit. And just a couple little tips I want to share with you guys in regards to twilight photography. 9 times out of 10, you're also going to be shooting daytime photos for your client. Use that same opportunity when you're shooting those daytime compositions to lock down in your mind the money shots that you want to shoot during twilight. You don't want to come into shooting twilight trying to compose while you're shooting because that's going to take a lot of time. You want to make sure that you use that opportunity you shot during the daytime to figure out all those money shots and compositions so that when you get there at twilight, all you're doing is waiting for the right balance of light. So then once it's ready to go, all you're shooting is those compositions that you shot during the daytime that work good for this scene. And that's it. shoot those compositions, edit it back in Lightroom and Photoshop, and deliver it for your client. So as you can see, it doesn't really take that much. When you have a home that has beautiful light, consistent lighting, and everything's nicely balanced for the interior and exterior, it's very fast and easy to shoot these photos and deliver them back for your client. The biggest thing you want to make sure during Twilight is you find that nice balance between the ambient light of the interior of the home and the ambient light of the exterior. Once you find that nice balance where the interior is dominating more than that exterior, that's a go time to start shooting, because you don't have to worry about any more color casts coming in from the exterior. All you need to worry about is just getting nice composition so you can be in and out of there quick before that sky and that light is falling into darkness. We want to be quick during our twilights because we don't have that much time. So let's take a look at this image back in Lightroom and Photoshop so you can see how we actually built this whole thing up. So here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, here's our first image. And usually when I shoot twilights, I'm always doing a bracket of 5. And my settings are ISO 250 and f8.0. I'll go between 8.0 and 6.3 depending on how many images I need to shoot during a shoot. If I have a lot of images to shoot, I might go to 6.3 just to make my speed faster when I'm shooting and capturing these images. But these 5 brackets, what I'll do is I'll take them in Lightroom, right click, and I'll go to Photo Merge HDR. What that does is it merges the images into a huge raw file that allows me to push and pull the images in Lightroom without destroying the image and getting any kind of grain or pixelation. All that data is within the raw file, and I can use that to my advantage to get this image looking good and clean for our client. So with that said, once it was merged, this is the before. As you can see, it looks just like the raw file, but after I added my settings, I was able to get this. So usually for twilights, unlike daytimes, sometimes in the daytimes too, I'll change my profile to neutral, and the reason why I do that is because I want detail within the highlights and shadows. If I put this to color, look what the image looks like. You see there's a lot more contrast in the scene. The detail isn't as dominant, but when I go to neutral, I get a lot more information within the highlights and shadows. So I can bring back any kind of contrast I need after the fact. I'd rather have a flatter image to work with because it'll allow me to get a lot more detail for the image, and then I can push and pull whatever I need to get the final result looking good, whether I want to add the contrast or not. So for this image, a couple little tweaks. The white balance looked pretty good as shot. There's just a slight warmth that I think I'm going to take off and remove that in Photoshop. But other than that, exposure, I put it up to 0.60, dropped the highlights down, opened up the shadows, added some blacks. I didn't touch the whites at all because the whites look great as it is. Texture, I put it to 20, clarity to 15. And then because there are some blacks in here, I just use the tone curve to just add some -14 to the darks just to really target those blacks so we get a little bit more contrast in that. Other than that, we have our lens corrections, which look good, and then we have our vertical line straight, so we use our transform tool to add some guides so we can make sure that our verticals are nice and straight. So those are the global edits we did for the primary photo. And then other than that, we did add a mask here. One mask here for which was the exterior view. We just bumped up the exposure on it, so we had some more detail in those shadowed areas. And the other mask here was for the color. It was a little bit too warm, so I just added a mask, targeted the whites, and then dropped the saturation down to -47 just to clean it up. And that's pretty much it. So let's take a look at this in Photoshop so you can see how we built it up in there. So here we are in Photoshop, and let's build this up from the bottom. So this is our starting off point. This is what we did in Lightroom as the base layer. Next, as you can see out here, there are some little, little bits of puddle and some little areas here that I wanted to clean up in the backyard. So I just used the remove brush tool, which is this feature here, remove tool. It's a great feature because it really makes our job much faster when it comes to cleaning up an image, and I haven't to spend so much time trying to clean it up and make it look perfect. That remove tool it's literally magic. So before and after, as you can see, it just kind of cleans up those areas that didn't look good. Next, I wanted to make sure that I brought back some more highlights and contrast to the image, and I also want to clean up the image just a little bit. It looks pretty good, but if I add this curve, look what it does to the image. You see, it's a subtle bump in the whites and the blacks, just a little bit, but enough that it makes a difference, and I like the way that looks. But now I also wanted to target the blacks and bring some more contrast to those areas. So I've added a levels, and as you can see, just bringing in the slider to the right of the left side of this histogram really targets those blacks and adds some more contrast to it. Now, this fireplace area, as you can see, it's not perfect. It's got some gradients of white. I don't know where that's coming from. It doesn't look that good. So what I did here is I added another layer here, and all I did was make a selection around that fireplace. So if I click here, you can see all I did was make a selection and I painted it black. After I painted it black, I added a blend mode to it. So by double clicking the layer, what I did is with the layer style, I used the underlying layer to pull in the information of the texture of that fireplace area. So if you see here, if I just push this back here, you see this is full black, completely black colored fireplace area. But then if I hold Alt, I can split this and have a nice transition and bring back some more information in those that fireplace where we get some more of those cracks in the scene, so it actually looks good and it doesn't look just like a black image. We actually get some more detail in that area. So doing that, it just kind of cleans that up and it doesn't look so dirty. So if I take that off and on, look at what of a difference that makes. You don't notice that so much when you're there on site, but in a photo you really can see that difference. So next, same thing here with the tops of these little chairs here. As you can see, there's got some fingerprints and handprints here. Just, it doesn't look too good. So same thing, I did the exact same approach. I made a selection around those areas there. I just painted it black, and then I used the blend mode to clean that up and bring back some more of that texture that's underneath it. So that's before and after, and I think that looks pretty good. And then lastly, we just cleaned up our TV here, added black, and then added a nice little gradient from the top corner to the bottom right. And that's it. Save that, bring it back to the Lightroom, and we're done. Everything was already done. We already made the verticals nice and straight and tackled any of the other issues back in Photoshop. So we have a deliverable image for our client. So as you can see, it wasn't difficult to capture this image or edit it back at the computer. I'll leave it up to you guys how far you want to take that edit to make it look really good. But realistically, you could have just edited this back in Lightroom without even going into Photoshop and really had a nice looking image still deliverable for your client. So let's take a look at our next image. So here we are still in the same property, but in the kitchen area. And as you can see, it's similar to the other composition that we had where everything looks pretty good. The lighting looks great. We don't have any kind of color casting we have to worry about. The only things that we want to bring up is maybe just right here where the chairs are at, bring that area up so we have a little bit more separation actually between the chairs and the actual island there of the inside that kitchen. And then we want to tone down the highlights just a bit as well. It's a little bit too hot there on the ceiling and onto the wall area here. But other than that, everything looks good. The colors look good for the most part. I think I might want to dial it back just a bit. It's a little bit warm, a tad, not too much. It's still acceptable, but for my taste, I want to bring back that warmth just to be a little bit more cooler so it's not so yellow. And then that's it. Bring up the exposure on the surrounding areas, maybe around here. And that's it. I like the contrast and I like the darkness of this wall here, so I want to retain that. But the only other thing I want to make sure is just to bring up the information here so we get, like I said, some separation from those chairs and the island. So let's take a look at the final image of this one. So here's a final edited image, and look at the areas that we took care of. Number one, we got some nice separation there with those chairs and the black of that island. I think that looks pretty good. We still have the nice contrast in the scene. I like the blacks that's happening over here. I do like the black behind those chairs where the island's at. And our highlights are tamed. It's not so hot here where the wall is at. And the lights in the ceiling, I mean, those are going to be bright. I mean, no matter what, we don't need to show more information in the bulb. There's no purpose of showing a bulb. I mean, it is bright and there's nothing wrong with that. And other than that, the scene looks good. We got nice contrast, color, and texture. And it's a deliverable photo for our client that, like I said, it didn't take long at all. It was just a nice composition and edited back at the computer very quick and easily without spending too much time. So let's take a look at this one back in Lightroom and Photoshop and see exactly how we built this up. So here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, like before, we have our 5 brackets here, and the same thing, we have ISO 250, f8.0. Merge those together to get a nice raw file here with a lot more information, which is pretty much is a huge raw file, like I said, that we can push and pull so we don't have to destroy the image when we're messing with it in Lightroom. So as you can see, we have our profile set to neutral, so we have a lot more information in our highlights and shadow areas. I kept the white balance to as shot because I think that looked pretty good. Exposure bumped it up to 60, dropped the highlights, shadows. I did bring up the whites in this because it looked kind of underexposed. So I did in this situation bring up the whites. If I put it back to where it was at, it's just a little bit too dark. So bringing it up to 39 just gives it a little bit more of a pop of exposure in there. Added the black to really target those black areas, texture and clarity, and then same thing with the tone curve. We added some darks to just really target some more of those blacks. And then on top of that, our lens corrections, and then we added our guides here to make sure we have a nice, perfectly symmetrical looking image without our property looking like it's falling over or whatever. We want to make sure that our verticals and horizontals look good, so it represents a nicely built property. So let's take a look at what we did here as far as masks go. As you can see, the main thing here was I turned down the warmth so it's a little bit more cooler. So if I take this off, it's very, very subtle, but do you see there's a little bit more warmth here? It's not too bad. It's still inviting, but I just want it to be a little bit more of a neutral palette rather than this warmth here. So all I did was I added a mask targeting that the color range of that yellow, and I just dropped the saturation to -82. And if I take this off and on, you can see it really cleans up those whites and really makes it so that it's a nice neutral palette here with whites and blacks only in the scene. So that's pretty much it. Other than that, I don't think we... there is a mirror back here behind this the kitchen area, so I just removed the camera, which is very simple. You could barely notice it, but it was noticed enough if you zoomed into it, and that's it. So let's open this final image up in Photoshop so you can see what we did to bring this to a good looking result. So here we are in Photoshop, and as you can see, we barely did anything to the image. All we did was added a curves to it just to bring up the contrast in the image. So if I take this off and on, as you can see, it bumps up that contrast for the whites and the blacks, and also changes the color just a slight shift to make it look cleaner. So that's off and on. And just so you know exactly what I'm doing here, let me delete this. All I did was go to this adjustment layer, add a curves, and I'm going option, and I'm clicking here where it says auto. And all I'm doing is see where it says find dark and light colors. By doing that, Photoshop is looking for those areas and bumping it up to look good. And also cleaning up the color as well. So if you see, if I click OK, and I take that off and on, it really helps to really clean up that white and add some more contrast in the image. So that's pretty much it. We save that, bring it back into Lightroom. And the only other thing we did here is, if I take this, let me just show you. I didn't like when I brought it back that this was still not as dark as I wanted it. So what I did was, I went here to the brush, the mask, and I did a mask for the luminance range. And pretty much I just targeted that area there. And then all I did was drop the blacks down to -35 to just target that area there. So as you can see where it's red over there on the left hand side. And if I take that off and on, it really just brings back that contrast and matches perfectly with the bottom of this island area here. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, everything was already leveled out already previously in our raw files so that we don't have to worry about it after the fact. Look how easy and simple it was to deliver this photo. It didn't take that much, and in Photoshop, it was just one extra step we did to really add that extra little touch to it, bring it back into Lightroom, and then finish it up. Something I want you guys to notice when it comes to this kitchen scene, unlike the previous photo where we had that view of the pool, this kitchen shot, we don't have anything to worry about. That being said, when you're actually on-site shooting for your client, something like this, which is a kitchen shot where there is no windows or views, you could save that for the end. Focus on the areas that require time, because we have a very limited amount of time between dusk and that dark twilight sky. We want to make sure we get that nice pretty color in that sky before it gets too dark, or we don't want to, and also we don't want to shoot when it's too early. We want to find the nice balance because we want to showcase the areas of the home that really look good during twilight, that have the nice lighting built into this home. So think about that when you guys are shooting. Focus on the areas first that require time sensitivity, and then all the areas where timing is not relevant, you can shoot that at the end and save yourself some time and stress when you're on there on site for your client. So thanks again, guys, for joining me on this video. I hope you guys found some tips and techniques that's going to help you out when you're out there shooting these twilights for your own clientele. And remember to like and subscribe, guys. It's a metric that YouTube uses to push these videos out and allows me to continue to make these videos for you. I really hope you guys find some tips and techniques that's going to help you out when you guys are out there shooting for your own clientele. Well, until next time, guys, remember, keep on shooting, and I'll see you then.